I worked in the emergency department for quite a few years. I've also worked in OB.
And emergency department. Did you give vaccinations yourself? Did you actually administer them yourself?
Yes. I can't tell you how many tetanus shots I've given.
And-
Hundreds.
And now that you know what you know, and you've done all the research, just jump ahead a second. Do you look back at those tetanus shots and think, why did they, it's not your fault, did they train me to think that that's what they should have had?
Yes. In fact, since my son was born, he's 4.5 now, and he was vaccine injured, so I started to research, but I have not gone back to work and would never be able to return to my profession knowing what I know now after the research I've done. I would never be able to go back and give vaccinations or just follow the whole paradigm of mainstream medicine and the treatments given now, knowing what I know.
So what were you taught when you were training to be an RM? What were you taught about vaccines?
Nothing.
Because they expect you guys to give them. They
Yes,
should teach you.
They teach us how to give them, the technique to use, and the schedule. That's it, really.
And you say you've given countless tetanus jabs.
Oh,
And when you
hundreds.
say tetanus, you mean the Tdap or the Ddap?
Yeah, it was TD we usually gave.
To the adults or whatever
Yes.
came in.
Yep.
And so what kind of injuries? So just anything, and it was just standard?
Oh, anything. If you, were in the kitchen and nicked yourself with your own knife that had just come out of the dishwasher, you got a tetanus shot. Any break in the skin was a tetanus shot automatically.
And some people report when they come to these interviews that they go into hospital for something completely different, broken leg, anything, and it's, oh, are you up to date? No, well, let's just give you one anyway. It's like really encouraged.
Yes, we only gave them for instances when there actually was a break in the skin, but it is very encouraged to get a tetanus shot if you have any risk, what they call risk whatsoever.
Okay, so when did you wake up? Was this just with this beautiful boy behind?
My 4-year-old, yes.
So your youngest child?
My youngest
And
child.
How many you got?
I have 4 total. I have 2 that are grown up and out on their own, and I have a 13-year-old and a 4-year-old that are home
And
with
all
us.
of them are fully vaccinated?
Yes.
Because you truly believe that vaccines were safe and effective?
I truly believe that vaccines are safe and effective, yes.
Okay, so what happened for you to find out the truth? Do tell us. We're waiting.
All right. My youngest one was born very prematurely. He was born at 25 weeks. He was 1 pound 11 ounces at birth. Now, they didn't give him the hepatitis B shot the day of birth like they do most infants in America. They waited until he was 1 month old. And at that point, he had just regained his birth weight of 1 pound 11 ounces. So I don't know if you can see here, but this is a picture of him.
Oh yeah, please can we show? Oh, he's tiny.
At 1
Look at
pound
that.
11 ounces when he received his first hepatitis B vaccine, which
1 pound
11 ounces. So
11
if you want a
ounces.
perspective, picture a full-size submarine sandwich, and that is his exact size. He was 1 foot long, and so a 1 foot sub sandwich was his size.
And they gave him Hep B.
and they gave him Hep B.
And you were fine because you're a nurse and you were trained that vaccines are safe and effective. Or did you have a gut feeling?
I had a gut feeling, and I questioned them, but I'm still, I didn't know at that time that I had a choice. I mean, I was just so brainwashed with the whole, the way things are in medicine that I was like, I just thought I had to do this, even though I had a gut feeling that it wasn't the right thing to do.
And even at the times, the doctors in the NICU, which we were in, acknowledged that there would actually be a deterioration of his current condition post the shot.
They said he may have respiratory difficulties afterwards.
That is
and
not
warned us of
unusual.
that.
You've got to wonder about the intelligence of these people, have you not?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They actually said it was expected behavior post it.
Then why are we doing it?
Exactly.
why?
Especially because hepatitis B is a sexually transmitted disease that my 1 pound infant had 0 chance of contracting. So, and again, with the 250 micrograms of aluminum. So he received that at 1 month old. Now, he was still in the NICU at 2 months. At this time, he was, he had just reached, he got his Grammy, which in the NICU is an award they get when they reach 1,000 grams, which is 2 pounds, 2 ounces.
He got an award for being 2 pounds 2 ounces.
Yes.
They
It's his
call it.
Grammy because he reached 1,000 grams. So he was given his 2-month vaccines 3 days later.
Whoa.
And this is still 6 months, or 6 weeks, I mean, before he should have even been born.
So
this
wait. So he's still in the NICU.
He's still in the NICU.
And he weighs how much?
He weighs 2 pounds, 2 ounces.
And they want to vaccinate him?
Again.
With his 2-month vaccines?
Mm-hmm.
And do you know what those 2-month vaccines were?
They were, I have it on here.
Do you know how lucky you are that your boy is alive?
Yes, I do now. He got the Hib, Pediatrix, and Prevnar. This is...
He got Prevnar at how many? 2 pounds?
At 2
2
pounds.
pounds, 2 ounces.
They gave that, you know what, that is a jailable thing. They gave this 2 pound, 2 ounce baby Prevnar, on top of others, but Prevnar, the lethal vaccine from hell. And what else did they give him?
Hib and Pediatrix.
And keep in mind, too, that all of these vaccines occurred long before he was even supposed to be due, which
Born,
would have
yeah.
been in March of 2013, but he was actually born in December. So when we talk about a month, we're talking January, and then if we're talking about 2 months, we're talking about February. So it was long before he was even, expected to be born that he was getting these. So the developmental cycle wasn't there.
This is when I was technically 34 weeks pregnant.
Yep.
That he received his 2-month vaccines. So he was in the NICU.
I can't believe he survived. I can't believe he survived that, guys. At 2 pounds to have all that.
They gave him to all the babies. All the babies got their full vaccines.
He's okay. If you're okay with him. There he is, the child that survived all those ghastly vaccines at 2 pounds. Hello.
Can you go watch YouTube for a little while?
No.
And I'll give you a snack. How's that sound?
Put me down.
Put me down, Dad.
It's a Power Ranger.
Okay.
So, we had an incredibly hard time getting him out of the NICU. We got to a point where he was absolutely stable. They keep him on 24-hour-day continuous monitoring. So with preemies, they will have desaturations, oxygen desaturations, and Brady's, where their heart rate drops. He had not had any of these at all. I mean, 0 for over 3 weeks. They would only let me breastfeed once a day. Now I was pumping and freezing.
They would only let you breastfeed your baby once a day. Why? What's the problem with you going in to breastfeed as normal?
The problem he had was he was not gaining weight at all. So their explanation was that breastfeeding expended too much energy for him to eat to get his calories. So I was giving him expressed breast milk in a bottle instead of letting him actually breastfeed at the breast. So it got to the point where they just wouldn't let him go. He had no medical issues. They were doing nothing for him medically that I could not do at home. I started kind of getting a little argumentative with the doctors, and not argumentative, but just, why are we keeping him here? Why can't I bring him home? And they told me that pediatricians do not like it if the babies are not gaining a certain amount of weight a day. So until he is gaining, I think it was half an ounce. Was that what it was? Half an ounce a day.
That's what it was.
He will not be discharged. And they convinced me at this. Now, my baby's been in here for 3.5 months now. At this time, I was pretty desperate to get him out of there and get him home. I said, I'll just get him home and do what I need to do with him. They wanted to mix half breast milk and half formula. So I agreed to that, to get him out, to get him home. So that's what he started having. Meanwhile, I'd been exclusively pumping for 3.5 months. My milk supply I lost my milk supply the week before he came home from the hospital. Dried up. I had enough breast milk that we actually did the half breast milk, half formula for until he was 9 months old. I had enough stored, but anyway, so we get home. He went for his well checkup about 3 weeks after we'd been home, his 4-month well checkup, and got his 4-month vaccines. So, about a week after he had his 4-month vaccines, we had a monitor.
Do you know how much he weighed at his 4 months?
He was, 3 pounds. He was 3 pounds something.
At 4 months, he was 3 pounds something, and he had more vaccines.
Actually, I think he was 5 pounds. I think I told you wrong.
5 pounds still. That's just lighter than any baby I've ever had. Could you tell us what he had when he was given his 4 month vaccines at 5 pounds?
He had pneumococcal and Prevnar.
Bloody Prevnar again. Why are they giving him all this Prevnar?
Yes, well, I actually, I have part of the, after the fact when I started researching, I have the part of the insert from the Prevnar, and it actually states right on there, it says, warnings and precautions. Apnea following intramuscular vaccination has been observed in some infants born prematurely. Decisions about when to administer an intramuscular vaccine, including Prevnar 13, to infants born prematurely should be based on consideration of the individual infant's medical status and potential benefits and risks. So what happened to my son was he had numerous episodes where he stopped breathing. We had a monitor at home that was a motion monitor that monitored his breathing pattern, and twice during the week after these vaccinations, it went off. It alarmed. I ran in, scooped him up. He started breathing. He then had episodes where I caught him sitting in his little baby chair one day next to me, and I looked over and he just had this look of panic and fear in his eye. And I just looked at him, and all of a sudden he wasn't breathing. He was struggling to breathe, and it was like he couldn't take a breath, and you could just see the fear in his eyes. And I reached, I went over and I grabbed him and started pounding on his back. I had the bulb suction, and I was trying to suction him because it appeared that he was choking. But he finally came out of it, started gasping for breath, and started breathing again. So this happened a total of 3 times. He was rehospitalized exactly 14 days after his 4-month vaccinations for these episodes of not breathing. And he had a witnessed event in the hospital where he stopped breathing and turned blue, and they were, starting to resuscitate him.
What did the medical professionals say to you about this?
They said he had reflux.
So, but did you bring up the fact that, these vaccines?
I didn't. At this time, it never even entered my consciousness at all. I never
Isn't that
even thought about it.
interesting, though?
I was so brainwashed. I was so much a part of the mainstream medical,
There was not even any question about it. It was, it was just all attributed to reflux, and that was essentially it. But, really, the whole time we were there, they really never had any good answers.
No.
Themselves. I think they chalked it up, the reflux, as as a standby or an old standard for this type of behavior, even though it's not necessarily true.
So I was looking, when I went back and looked at the insert for, again, the Prevnar, it also states pediatric use, safety, and effectiveness in Prevnar 13 in children below the age of 6 weeks have not been established. So the time he got his 4-month vaccinations, he was technically, going by what age he should have been, only 4 weeks old. So that's medical experimentation without informed consent. Twice he was given a vaccine that was not approved for his age range before he was 6 weeks old. Pentacel also says the same thing. Not approved under 6 weeks of age. So,
we got to be able to get these people on medical negligence. We have to be able to do that.
you would think so. You would think so. Because
has anyone ever tried? Have we ever had anyone ever try and do this? We talk about it all the time.
I don't know, but I'd be willing to investigate that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
we should be able to just get them on the fact that they say vaccines are safe and effective, when actually the CDC does not say that.
Yeah. Well, preemies are always, anything medical whatsoever or developmentally, they're always assessed on their adjusted age, never on their biological age. They're always assessed on their gestational age, except for vaccines. So, like for his developmental milestones, he was always expected for his adjusted age, like how old he should have been, as opposed to how old he really was because he was born so early. The only place that is not applied is in vaccines. So, if you read the inserts on some of these, like I have from Pentacel and Prevnar, Penticell, some of the reported side effects are cyanosis, apnea, fever, lethargy, inconsolable crying. It goes on and on. There's all sorts of... But the cyanosis and apnea was exactly what happened with him. The Prevnar, some of them were acute gastroenteritis, choking, apnea.
Just for the person who keeps asking over and over again about Prevnar, the reason we speak about anything is because Prevnar has come up ridiculous amount of times as being the vaccine given to babies that are very, very little or toddlers, and each time when there's a Prevnar involved, there's a massive injury. So it's just the people study, collecting the people's stuff. I'm not saying it's worse than anything else, it's just that we're hearing Prevnar, and everything to do with Prevnar is huge injury, not just mentally but physically, not being able to walk afterwards. Massive injury coming from Prevnar, as reported by the parents. Carol.
Okay. So that was, we went home on a monitor. He gradually, recovered, stopped having these episodes. Life went on. We continued to vaccinate him. He got his MMR at 12 months, which actually was only 9 months for him. But he got it right on time at 12 months. The time he got his MMR, he was saying one word, which was okay because he was, expected to be developmentally delayed. Now, after he got his MMR, I went back and got his records from his pediatrician and have looked through them. And immediately after receiving the MMR, he started having ear infections. He had 8 sick visits in the 3 months following his MMR. Ear infection, fever, wheezy cough, vomiting, bronchiolitis, wheezy, was started on nebs, just sick. He was sick continuously for 3 months following his 12-month vaccinations. So it came time for his 15 months. When I did go into his 15-month appointment, I told them I had some
John,
Yeah.
can you take Billy outside? He's really hot in here. It's like sweating bucket.
Oh well.
Sorry guys. Sorry everyone, carry on.
Sorry. I had some, it's in his notes from his pediatrician that I declined, I wanted to postpone his vaccinations that day because I felt he was off, like he might be coming down with something. So he had 4 words at that time. 16 months, he did get his vaccinations. And he got a DTaP and Hep B at that time. We were leaving on a cross-country road trip. We drove from New York to California and back. It was a 4-week trip. Coming back, he developed a very high fever, became lethargic. I was actually on the loneliest road in Nevada. There was no type of facilities or stores or anything for quite a long way. It was a little nerve-wracking. But he had this fever. We had him seen in an emergency room a couple days later. They did blood work, they did urine tests. There was no reason they could find for the fever. He didn't have congestion, didn't have anything going on. Fever lasted another 6 days after that. I had him seen again in Missouri. They gave him antibiotics. They said he possibly had an ear infection starting. Came home, continued to have a high fever, and was diagnosed with hand, foot, and mouth disease. Another ear infection. So at this point he got an ENT referral and was going to get tubes placed in his ears. Now about this time, and it was gradual, it wasn't all of a sudden this happened, but during this time he had had 4 or 5 words and he had lost them. He stopped following commands. He started having major temper tantrums. He stopped waving goodbye. Also at this time he kept failing his hearing screenings. So, they were going to put tubes in his ear. I was like, oh, well, that's why he can't talk, because he can't hear. We're going to put tubes in. Everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be wonderful. I was fully expecting when he got the tubes put in his ear that he would immediately start talking. And he didn't. He got the tubes placed in August. Nothing changed. Absolutely nothing. So, he was about 2.5. Well, actually, it was later that year. Before he turned 2, he started getting chronic diarrhea. And he'd have diapers just full of undigested food. I took him numerous times in to the pediatrician. They're like, oh, it's toddler's diarrhea. It's nothing.
It's toddlers diarrhea.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. We all got diagnosed.
It's normal
with
to have undigested food in your stool. I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. You can literally see what he ate at his last meal in his diaper every time he eats.
that. It's normal, love.
So I took him like 4 or 5 times to the doctor for that. He started with the bright red cheeks, and I tried explaining to them. I'm like, look, it's not there all the time, but when he eats certain things, his cheeks turn bright red, and it gets under his chin, and sometimes in his diaper, he'll have this like inflamed red rash, which will go away in a couple hours later after I clean him up. So I started researching, and I originally started looking at food, and we ended up learning a lot about food and diet and going on a whole foods diet, things like that. He did have, there was one morning, the diarrhea continued. My husband, I'll never forget, it was Black Friday. My husband got him up in the morning and started screaming. I mean, literally screaming.
Really?
Like, I was terrified. I've never heard my husband, like, screaming my name for me. And I went running up the stairs, and my son had a roundworm alive that was coming out, and I had to remove the roundworm from his body. And he had a 20-centimeter roundworm.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
His
that's
digestive tract was so damaged that he was able to have a 20-centimeter roundworm living in his digestive tract, and I had taken him to the pediatrician numerous times and told them there is something wrong here. But I mean, that's not normal. It's rare. The only way that's going to happen is if you have a child with a severely damaged intestinal tract. You know, he was damaged, and it's, you know,
That's freaky scary. Did you
Yeah,
frame
that's
it?
how come I laugh. That's how come I like giggle about it, because I remember it was just like I didn't know what it was.
he's still traumatized. I don't
Yeah.
think he'll ever.
Yeah, you get post-traumatic stress disorder from that one. That's
Yeah, that
awful.
was a tough one.
And then we took it to the doctor. We put it in a plastic
How
bag.
big? Show the peeps how big that is. Really that big?
Mhm.
How wide?
It was, like, you know, it was.
What the...
So we took him to the doctor's office, and they kind of like laughed about it. They were like, "Wow, that's impressive to get something that size out of a."
Oh, now it's
Yeah.
not just normal, but impressive.
Yeah.
But they weren't concerned at all about how this happened or why this happened. They were just like, "Wow," you know.
Ay, these peeps.
So you know, he was a sick kid. I started doing research at that point. I suspected at some point in my research that he had food allergies with the red cheeks, you know, the eczema and stuff. And so I decided to put him on an elimination diet. This is when he's 2.5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I had read about, you know, I was starting to question vaccines at this time. I'd done some research, and I had read about autism, and I had read about the treatment for autism being gluten-free, dairy-free diets and things of that nature. So I took away all foods except for like brown rice, sweet potatoes, broccoli, and started adding things in one by one to try and figure out
Right.
what was causing the problems. 3 weeks into the diet, he started talking, and he has never stopped since. I mean, just the way his language took off was unbelievable. And it was 3 weeks after cutting out gluten, dairy, and all the other bad things. 6 weeks into the diet, he stopped banging his head on the floor, because that was another thing that I had talked to the doctor about. Oh, it's normal. These extreme temper tantrums, they're normal. I've raised 4 kids. I knew it wasn't normal. But again, denial is a powerful thing too, because I should have known earlier than I did, but I didn't. And then 8 weeks in, I'll always remember this moment also, he started calling me. He's like, "Come here, come here, come here." And I went in the room. He says, "Look, he's snuggling." And then it just hit me. This was the first time he'd ever snuggled. It was 8 weeks after starting the diet, and
Interesting.
it just hit me right then. And like, he has autism. I knew. And so we've continued to work with diet and, you know, some targeted supplements, and he's come a long way. He's recovered quite a bit. He has excellent language now. He still has a lot of behavioral issues, you know, things like that.
So is there anything that would make you guys vaccinate yourselves or your peeps again?
No.
And you're an RN. You're trained
RN.
to vaccinate people.
Yes,
You're
but
trained on the dark side.
I've done my research. I've seen the science. The science is there. it's just never looked at by the people that,
You mean the good science is there?
yeah.
There's science,
Science.
and then there's the dark pharmaceutical science.
Yes.
There's two different types of science here.
Hmm.
Well, at least you're over on our side now.
Yes.
That's one good thing about all of this is you've got one big new family
Yes.
that love you, and your boy. I cannot get over that he's still here. From all the stories that we are told, that story would have ended in death.
He almost did quite a few times after his 4-month shots. There was quite a few times it could have ended very differently. There was a period of time for a week when neither I nor him, we took turns sleeping. We would just sit and stare at this 4-month-old baby to make sure he was breathing, because he didn't make any noise during these episodes when he stopped breathing. He just...
We actually moved. We had a little bassinet that we actually put right next to the bed. Remember that? And then we'd put the motion sensors underneath that. So literally, we're in the same room with him with the motion sensors and everything else. And
And we had a chair there. One of
Yeah.
us would sit up and watch. And
So now, how old is he now?
he's 4.5.
He's 4.5. Now, do we have any problems from this mass vaccine schedule that your poor boys had from a pound?
Well, he's, he still has issues. He does have autism. He's very high functioning, which I am thankful for. Very, very thankful for. He has a lot of behavior issues. Like, one of the things, I can't take him into a grocery store unless he's strapped into a cart, because he will just run through the store. He will, grab things off the shelf. He has,
So unaware of danger around him or the danger that he's in.
yeah.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And even like, I don't know if you've seen us out here where, we'll be chatting fine, he'll be talking to somebody, and then he'll suddenly, do the drop to the ground. I'm not moving, screaming. I have a new agenda that's different from mom and dad's, and I'm going to go in this direction. So it's the constant battle back and forth with that, which is typical of this the damage.
And he's so young, there's so much that can be done there. Now you're all over on the right side and mixing with those peeps out there. All sorts of good things are going to happen. Now, so as an RN, you didn't know. You went out there to help people. You thought by giving them tetanus jabs that you were actually doing the right thing.
Yes. And I can tell you, too, that somewhere I must have stored things in my subconscious. Yeah. It didn't register with me at the time. And I think this says a lot for the medical profession. People say, how can they not see? I honestly did not see. I can go back now and I can tell you a story about, I can picture this mother's face. Her son was brought in from daycare with seizures. He was around 18 months old. I don't remember his exact age. So the mother came in separately. She comes running into the emergency room, distraught, of course. And, we tell them, oh, they're febrile seizures. They're normal, which is what we tell everybody when their kids come in.
So why do you say they're normal? Because you've been
That's
taught
what
to
I
say
was
that.
taught to say. That's what I was taught to say.
Okay.
I never questioned it.
No, of course. I'm not judging. I'm just curious.
Yeah, well, I know.
where it
I
came from.
totally, I understand, because I've seen it from both sides. But so she says to me, she looks at me and she's like, I don't understand. How can he be having febrile seizures? He's not sick. I just took him to the pediatrician yesterday and he had his vaccinations. They wouldn't give him his shots if he was sick. And still, even then, it didn't.
But you remember it.
But once I did my research and understood what was going on, it was right there. Like, somewhere I stored that in my subconscious. And I know, I practiced as a nurse for 12 years and never heard of errors.
I feel like there's a book in you. Life as an RN. Think about all the things that have gone on in accidents and emergency, whatever you call it over here. What do you call it? Where do you used to work? In emergency.
In emergency, yep.
Yeah. So think about all of that. It's the kind of book that I want to pick up at the airport on my flight from New York to Austin and have it read by the time I get to the end and talk about it for 2 days. I feel like your story is that. What do you think, peeps? They agree. We need people like you to stand up and speak out because, the nurses are the bravest of the medical profession. They're so brave. They come out, so many of them come out and talk about it. But they were taking instruction from the doctors. So doctors...
And we're just not taught anything else. And I know even when I started doing my research and started to think, maybe vaccines are not good. But I said, well, it doesn't matter because you have to give them. In my mind, there wasn't an option not to give them. It was just, even if I thought they were bad, you have to give your kid vaccinations. There's no
Sure.
getting around it. That was the mentality I had for a long, long time. So I know there are huge barriers to cross for people to even begin to think critically about these things. It's just so ingrained in our belief system.
And sadly, very, very sadly for many and most, is we have to have injured children for us to understand it.
Yeah,
Which
I
is
did. It was